Growing up in Brazil, I dreamt about the Amazon rainforest. For me, it was a magical place, a spiritual life force and the soul of our country. I thought it was indestructible. As I got older, I had to face the sad reality that this forest is in fact very fragile and that people were cutting it down to profit from its resources. It took years and many battles to start protecting the rainforest. But now, I'm hearing those gains are being undone and that deforestation is on the rise again. Government forces are having to go in and fight to stop the destruction.
A gente está indo a ponto em que tem várias motosserras cantando.
What's driving this new attack on the Amazon? Could the cause be something we are all responsible for?
In the last 2 decades, the United States has built up a massive military presence in the Middle East. Our thirst for oil is one of the major reasons we came here, and it is now threatening us in ways we never imagined. To better understand this, I'm on board this convoy in the Persian Gulf, delivering fuel to bases supporting the fight against ISIS.
We're driving a truck with basically a bomb on the back of it.
Really?
Yeah. RPG, small arms. It doesn't take much to ignite it and have it explode.
Wow.
Fuel's a main supply that the military needs, so that's something that the enemy is definitely targeting as much as possible. And it's an easy target. A lot of times the supply lines are exposed. In Iraq and Afghanistan, that is a big problem.
So how many times do those fuel lines get hit?
In Iraq, 3 or 4 trucks hijacked the wheat.
Unbelievable.
Thousands of people have died doing this.
Of delivering fuel.
Yes. It can be just as dangerous as fighting on the front line. They know where the enemy's at. We don't.
Our wars in the Middle East have created massive damage. Our leaders are now warning that our oil addiction is gravely threatening our national security. But do we have the will and the way to end this dangerous addiction?
Brazil's Environmental Protection Force, IBAMA, is on the front lines, trying to defend the Amazon rainforest. The officer in charge here is Maria Luisa Souza, known as Malu. I'm on my way to meet her at her compound. I'm with an armed escort because this place is a hotspot for illegal deforestation. I hear Malu has another nickname.
Malu, nossa, prazer.
Oi, como é que é o apelido mesmo?
Diaba Loura, né?
Diaba Loura. De onde é que esse apelido, menina?
É, apelido da bandidagem de Novo Progresso, né?
Nossa Senhora.
Da floresta amazônica. Inclusive, a gente acabou de chegar aqui de um flagrante. Eu vou te mostrar. Vamos lá que eu vou te mostrar. Então, a gente estava em campo, pegamos um acampamento, né? Eles estavam desmatando no momento que a gente chegou. Essa aqui era a área. São duas imagens, né? Então, nessa imagem de satélite, você pode ver que a floresta está toda em pé, né? E o desmatamento é essa pequena areazinha. Ou seja, nessa
Essa
imagem,
aqui, ó.
em 10 dias, nessa diferença da passagem do satélite, eles fizeram 142 hectares, é o equivalente a 142 campos de futebol.
They did all this destruction in 10 days?
Em 10 dias. Isso eles fazem numa velocidade monstruosa. São pequenas formigas que trabalham na Amazônia. Ou seja, esse pessoal trabalha dia e noite. A motosserra não para. A gente achou sementes. Ou seja, eles desmatam, põem fogo e imediatamente plantam capim. E já colocam gado lá dentro.
They burn the forest after they cut it, and then they put in cows and they occupy the area like we've been here forever.
Exatamente. E esse gado, ele é vendido lá fora. Então a Europa, os Estados Unidos podem estar consumindo gado de unidade de conservação e de uma área desmatada ilegalmente.
I can't believe it.
O que gera muito dinheiro. Você tem a especulação fundiária, você tem lavagem de dinheiro. Então, a partir do momento que a gente está na Amazônia, a gente vê que é uma terra sem lei. Aqui, quem fala demais é cortado a garganta. É perigoso. A gente, em cada acampamento que a gente vai, a gente encontra armas, técnicas de guerra.
Wow.
E a minha cabeça já foi colocada a prêmio aqui. Tenho vários apelidos, né? Um deles é a Diaba Loura.
Pra mim você é a Anja Loura. Só pra você saber.
Depende, eu fico feliz quando me chamam de Diaba Loura, porque isso, de uma certa forma significa que a gente atrapalha o crime.
Do you have enough people? Do you have what you need to do your job?
Como é um trabalho muito complicado e cansativo e exaustivo, a gente teria que ter pelo menos 3 vezes mais o número de fiscais para atuar aqui na Amazônia.
Why do you do this job? Like, what puts each one of you to do this job?
Porque vale a pena. Quem trabalha aqui é porque nasceu para isso. Então, o nosso trabalho, eu estou guardando o tesouro mais precioso do mundo.
I had no idea that cattle was one of the biggest drivers of deforestation. I thought it would be logging or mining, but beef? Could society's appetite for meat actually destroy the Amazon rainforest?
The world's appetite for oil is stronger than ever, and it is killing us. Fighting pollution has been my most important battle, and no one can stop me. We even sued the federal government to allow California to regulate its own air and reduce greenhouse gases, and we won. I recently went to Paris to address world leaders on the importance of clean energy and reducing pollution.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no doubt that climate change is humanity's biggest threat. I know that we can build a smart energy future. We can break the pollution's death grip. Renewable energy will do to coal and oil what cars did to the horse and buggy industry. Our mission is to move forward as a united world. We will win this battle.
But we can't win unless our Department of Defense leads this battle against dirty energy. I've recently learned that both the Pentagon and the President have directed the military to reduce its oil use by switching to more renewables, like wind and solar. Today I'm on my way to Camp Arifjan because it's one of the largest US bases in the Middle East trying to go green. It's hard to believe that almost $1 trillion have been spent, tens of thousands of lives lost in this region, battles ignited by fossil fuels destroying our planet.
Crisis in the Persian Gulf. This is about oil and the price of gasoline.
The stakes are high. Our country now imports nearly half the oil it consumes.
Shock and awe. The next phase in the life of millions of people is going to be very violent.
ISIS militants continue to gain ground.
These wars have forced the military to radically rethink energy, from the immediate dangers of fuel convoys to the larger threat of oil dependence. Camp Arifjan is like a small city carved into the Arabian desert. Troops there support the international coalition fighting against ISIS. I want to know how much progress has been made here to break our oil addiction.
Today, I'm in the southern Amazon with Paulo Adario from Greenpeace. He says a bird's eye view helped me understand just how much deforestation is taking place here. The beauty seems to go on forever. But then, Adare tells me to brace myself.
All you see is, so can you see that the road?
Yeah.
This is how everything starts. Everything starts with a small logging road going through the forest. Access the lumber. They cut only the lumber that has commercial value, and then they leave. Then the road stays, and then a cattle rancher arrives, and then he starts cutting the remaining tree, burns everything to put cattle.
And cattle is not even natural of the Amazon. It's not even supposed to be.
No, definitely not. If they are responsible for 65% of all deforestation in the Amazon.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, I'm not kidding. What do you see down there? Pastures, only some patches of forest.
I mean, look over there. Look at the cattle. There's like sporadic cattle for all of this, like dry land.
Imagine the destruction of this beautiful forest to produce cattle. You know, when you eat burger, you don't realize that your burger
is coming from here.
From rainforest destruction.
All these giant geometric shapes carved into the landscape are because of cattle?
This whole thing that we are seeing right now,
was not here. Here we had old growth forest, ancient forest. And now look at this. We already lost 20% of the Amazon. Shocking.
Tanta coisa, né, para aprender e ver
You see this red area here? Mm-hmm. This is lost. This is called the belt or the arc of deforestation.
It looks really like that.
Arc of destruction looks like that. So
and what are these green areas in between of this red?
This is indigenous lands.
Is only indigenous.
The forest that this is remaining in areas that are protected by indigenous.
So that means if the indigenous people weren't occupying these areas, this would be gone as well.
If they were not here, definitely this would be completely disappeared. Wow. The indigenous people are the best guardians of the forest.
So who are these people behind destruction?
You have big companies dealing with big farmers, big international companies are involved, politicians are involved. They don't deforest because they hate trees. Yeah, they deforest because you can make money. Most of these people come here like vampires, you know. They come to make money and live.
Okay, so we know that beef is the main cause of deforestation.
They are not the only one. Yeah, you have the soy industry too. Most of the soy is exported for the production of animal feed that will feed cattle in Europe, in the West, etc. Yeah, cattle industry.
Yes.
In animal agriculture, is the same emissions as the entire transport industry, the airplanes, the cars, all the cars in the planet, everything.
But isn't development important?
Definitely is important. We have 200 million people living here. Many people living extreme poverty, and everybody deserves to have the same quality of life that the Brazilian middle class has. But there are different ways of developing. Brazil is by far the richest country in the world in terms of biodiversity. If you lose the Amazon, we are going to lose much more than only the biggest tropical forest in the world. We are going to lose the world because of climate change. If we don't stop destruction in our generation, if you don't do this now, we are going to lose this area forever.
We cannot let that happen.
We cannot let that happen.
can't we find a way to use our natural resources without destroying the planet? From trees to oil, we can't seem to stop pillaging Mother Earth. What will it take for us to stop?
The U.S. military is the single largest consumer of oil of any entity in the world. So I've come here to Camp Arifjan, one of the largest U.S. bases in the Middle East, to see what's being done to break our fossil fuel habit. Today, I will be meeting Chief Warrant Officer Cipriano Trujillo, the soldier overseeing green energy projects here.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Come on. 8. Stretch.
Man. Good morning, Governor. Chief Trujillo.
Morning, Chief.
How you doing?
Terrific, thank you. And how are you?
I'm well.
So tell me now, how long have you been in this base?
Yeah, this is my third time through, but 9 months on this station here.
Good. So you guys are going more and more green.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in 2012, the Army released policy that said that commanders at every level need to start looking at ways to reduce their energy output.
Right.
So we're looking at a bunch of different ways that we can incorporate solar, reuse water, those sort of things.
I've never seen that on any military base, and I've visited a lot of them, so that's kind of new here, huh?
Yeah, in fact, I can give you a tour of some of the stuff that we're doing here.
Absolutely. We'll go for your next set.
Enough rest, right?
Exactly. The chief tells me that the military has been investing billions in solar light carts, wind, battery storage, and other types of alternative energies in order to meet the Pentagon's energy goals. A solar-powered emergency warning system provides security in case of an attack. But the chief tells me that the technology that will save the most energy is the modular housing units, powered by rooftop solar and microgrids.
In most facilities, lighting is where the majority of your electricity goes. But for us here in the Middle East, it's air conditioning. We have 25 of the single-story structures and 72 of the two-story structures just on the other side.
And this is kind of like a pilot project, or is every base will get something like that?
So right now it's the pilot. Once we feel comfortable with it, we're going to start implementing it in other bases. And on Saturday, I'm flying up to Iraq to see if we can use them in bases there.
Trujillo also shows me plans for a solar-powered parking lot, one that will charge the first fleet of electric vehicles on the base. I mean, it's encouraging, but we've had electric vehicles and solar parking lots in California for quite some time. So tell me now, to me what is interesting is, I mean, here we are in the middle of the desert, and you have an abundant amount of sun. What do you think it is that has held the military back in a way when it comes to making the base more green?
One of the issues that we definitely run into is it has to be true and proven.
Right.
We have to know that it's not going to put any of the soldiers at risk. So what we've really attempted to do is start very small, ensure that the first projects are extremely successful. This way we can stop the naysayers and then move forward.
How do the average soldiers out there feel about that? Going green and their energy efficiency and all those things.
When I originally took this job, I literally felt like the first project I presented that people were filling up buckets with rocks so that they can stone me. I was really actually quite surprised with how much resistance that I received initially about solar.
Right.
So as soon as the light carts had such a great success, I presented this project, and everybody in the room had the exact same question you had. They said, "This is a great idea, Chief. Why are we barely doing this now?"
We all know that green technology has to be tried and true. But as I leave the base, all I see are diesel generators and row after row of gas-guzzling tanks and trucks. Green projects seem to barely exist. And yet, the military is on target for the clean energy goals. It just seems like a pretty low target. Why? Is it the military bureaucracy, or is there something else keeping us dangerously dependent on fossil fuels? I'm headed to Washington, D.C. to find out.
Growing up in southern Brazil, my 5 sisters and I ate meat pretty much every day. It's just part of the culture here. Per capita, Brazilians are one of the top consumers of beef on the planet. Now, with the world's growing appetite for beef, Brazil has also become a major exporter and is aiming to increase its market share, partly by selling to the US, the world's biggest consumer of beef, and to China, where demand for beef has grown 25% in just 10 years. I understand the need to develop and grow, but does that have to come at the expense of the rainforest and the climate? The Amazon rainforest is about the same size as the continental United States. 1/5 of the world's fresh water runs through it. And it is home to more species of animals and plants than anywhere on Earth. The Amazon represents more than half of the remaining rainforests on the planet. This forest is so vast, but it is not indestructible. To find out what's at stake, I'm going to talk to one of Brazil's top climate scientists, Dr. Antonio Nobre. So Antonio, tell us a little bit about this amazing green carpet of heaven over here.
Well, most people don't have the opportunity to come on the top of the forest. If you see all this many shades of green as you see here, it's because biodiversity is the essence of this type of forest. Every species of trees has thousands of species of bugs. And also if you get a leaf of one of these species and you look to the microbes that is sitting on the top of leaf, you find millions of species, millions. And this is all below our radar screen, so to speak, because we don't realize it's invisible. And the trees are shooting water from the groundwater, up high in the sky. And this goes up into the atmosphere and releases the heat out there, and this radiates to space, and this is very important as a mechanism to cool the planet. They're like air conditioners, open air conditioning. That's what the forest is.
So in other words, if we lose all these trees, we're losing the air conditioning that cools off the whole planet.
Not only that,
Not only that.
No. The trees are soaking up carbon. You know, the pollution that we produce, like carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Burning gasoline in our cars, you release carbon dioxide in the air, or burning coal. And the trees use carbon dioxide as a raw material.
So the trees are storing all this carbon. So if you come and cut it down and burn it out, does that mean that all that carbon goes up in the air?
Absolutely, yeah.
What would happen if this forest was gone?
When the forest is destroyed, climate changes, and then forest that's left is damaged as well. And then the forest grows drier and drier and eventually catch fire. So in the extreme, the whole area becomes a desert. And that's what is in store if we deforest. So we have to quit deforestation yesterday, not 2020 or 30. And there is no plan C. You have plan A. Plan A is business as usual. Keep plundering with all the resources and using as it were infinite. Plan B is what many people are attempting. Changing the matrix of energy and using clean sources, stop eating too much meat, and replanting forests. If that doesn't work, then we go to plan C. What's plan C?
I have no idea.
Going to another planet.
No, but we can't.
We don't have another planet. So either we work with plan B or we're
done.
Yeah, we're done. And so plan B has to work. It has to work.
People have to take accountability. Because it can't just be like, I'm leaving over here and whatever happens over there, who cares? It's not my problem, because it is everyone's problem.
Yes, people should wake up. It's like when you are in the midst of an unfolding disaster, what do? You panic? No. You move it. Move. That's what we need to do.
Washington. I've come here to see why the military, despite direct orders from the leadership to ramp up renewable energy, seems to have made such little progress on bases like Camp Erfjan. Today, I'm hoping to get answers from some of those who have served our military at its highest level. The biggest user of fuel is the military.
It is.
Right? So I know that the Obama administration is all pro alternative fuels and all that. The question that I really have for you guys is the Department of Defense is dragging its feet and it's slow on that. What do you think is the reason for that?
I think the military has been slow to come. Not just the military, it's the government as well.
There are a lot of laws that have been passed over the years where it's hard to make this go faster, and Sharon knows exactly what I'm talking about here.
This year, we had a Republican introduce an amendment that just passed the House that said that the Department of Defense can't do anything on any renewable energy and climate change.
Right.
Nothing. Can't spend any money on climate change at all.
I can remember times when I was told that there were certain staffers looking for items in the U.S. budget, in the defense budget, that had to do with either climate or energy so that they could zero those out.
I mean, it must be really weird, because to me the Republicans have been more supportive of the military. But here all of a sudden you have to go kind of to the other party to get sympathy.
Every year there would be in the House, there would be members who would try to strip out all of the energy programs at DOD.
That's right.
And it was, members from Texas, who have a vested interest in the current system. What business would subject itself to that kind of constriction? You can't do anything that makes your business more efficient and better.
It's amazing. Some members of my party have accepted the need to break our dependence on polluting oil. But many Republicans are still fighting the Pentagon's directive for the military to go green.
These executive orders require the Department of Defense to squander precious defense dollars by incorporating climate change bureaucracies into its acquisition and military operations, and to waste money on green energy projects.
And 2 House Republicans from Texas who have received hundreds of thousands of dollars from the fossil fuel industry year after year repeatedly try to block congressional efforts to scale up the military's use of alternative fuels. The House recently passed a drastic amendment by Congressman Buck, which would block an unprecedented directive from the Pentagon that orders our military to prepare for our clean energy future.
And now is the time to focus on our imminent defense requirements, because climate change is not an enemy of the United States.
We are being faced directly with climate change, and we know science is telling us that it's going to get worse in the future. And if we don't adjust, we are just asking for trouble.
Climate change is included in the larger debate about what is the world we're going to face in the future. What are those existential threats to America? And this is one of them.
What has changed? Why is there such an urgency now?
Climate change is especially dangerous because it makes everything else more dangerous. So it's what the department has called in its own strategy document a threat accelerator. When you have a place where you've got a weak government and a poor economy, and then you add into it a drought or an extreme weather event or a food shortage that's all being affected by climate change, that's when things begin to break down and you see conflict and you see people move. And that's when you have a security challenge.
Every time there's a flood in Mozambique or a tsunami in the Pacific, we're going to be involved from a military perspective, whether we like it or not. There's going to be more and more of that. A massive crisis that can only be responded to by the military. So,
unbelievable. The very oil that the military has fought and died over is actually undermining its own mission, exacerbating climate change, resulting in even more global instability. It's shocking to me that we are so ill prepared for the looming national security threat of climate change. Most of the people in the military willing to speak openly about climate issues are retired. But there's one active military leader who's been speaking up for almost a decade. That's Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Denny McGinn.
We must recognize that we as a nation are at a pivotal moment in history. Those who say that now is not the time to act fail to recognize the gravity and the urgency of our energy and climate change challenges.
McGinn retired from the Navy as a Vice Admiral. The Pentagon then recruited him to become Assistant Secretary of the Navy because of his extensive knowledge of renewable energy solutions. I'm on my way to Naval Station Norfolk to meet him.
Brazil is going through some really hard times. We've had a political corruption scandal, protests in the streets, the worst economic recession in decades, severe droughts, and the president was just impeached. With all these problems, I worry that protecting the rainforest will keep falling through the cracks. No one is fighting more desperately to defend the forest than the estimated 500,000 indigenous people who call the Amazon home and have for thousands of years. Now, the battle has taken them from the forest to the streets of the capital, demanding that laws protecting their land be enforced. On the front lines is Sônia Guajajara, an outspoken indigenous leader who has fought for the Amazon her entire life.
Se nós temos hoje uma bancada ruralista muito forte, muito grande, né, que está o tempo todo aí querendo, né, detonar com tudo quanto é direito, quando que eles, em algum momento, vai autorizar ou vai dizer que ainda tem terra indígena no Brasil?
Who are these politicians? Do you know who are these people who are creating this pressure on indigenous land and protected lands?
Olha, no Brasil assim, é difícil de você listar quem são os piores, né? Mas, assim, tipo, tem uns 300 parlamentares que estão juntos aí, conectados, assim, no mesmo interesse, né? Que é de acessar as terras indígenas, de explorar as terras indígenas. No ranking aí, sempre, a Cátia Abreu sempre esteve no topo, né? Como ministra também tem todo esse interesse aí de desenvolver a agricultura e o agronegócio, como sempre, né? Ela como senadora, ela lidera aí os políticos, né, que têm esse interesse também de desmatar. Eu até dei um prêmio para ela, né, que foi a Motosserra de Ouro, né? Ela como Miss Desmatamento. Ela merece todos esses prêmios, porque ela não muda, né, essa postura dela de aumentar a legalização do desmatamento, né?
I'm gonna ask the senator and former agriculture minister how she justifies the forest still being cut down. I've just come from the Amazon, flown over it, and saw a lot of deforestation, cattle.
Você sobrevoou o Pará.
Eu sobrevoei o Pará, eu sobrevoei o Mato Grosso, que o Mato Grosso está acabado, né? I was a little bit shocked to see that, you know, because I'm so proud of being Brazilian, I'm so proud of the forest, and what is this? Is this the cost of us being pressured to produce?
Então, há uma responsabilidade muito grande que o Brasil carrega sobre seus ombros, porque em 2050 nós teremos 2 bilhões de pessoas a mais no mundo e que precisam se alimentar.
But can we continue to grow without destroying the rainforest?
Com certeza. Quando o debate chegou, principalmente no Brasil, ele chegou muito agressivo contra os produtores. Nós que imaginávamos que éramos os salvadores da pátria, produzindo alimentos, de repente acordamos como os algozes da natureza, destruímos tudo. Mas todos os segmentos da agropecuária e do agronegócio brasileiro sempre foi a âncora que fez com que o Brasil pudesse ser impulsionado e superado essas crises. Isso por motivos simples. Nós temos clima, nós temos terras, nós temos muita água, que é a vocação do país. E o Brasil não contrariou essa vocação.
If politicians here feel like Brazil's natural resources will never run out and continue to cave into the growing pressure to produce, what hope is there for the rainforest, the climate, and our planet? There are some Brazilian ranchers trying to figure out better ways to farm the land so no more trees have to be cut down. But so far, it's not enough. The big issue of greenhouse gas emissions from raising cattle still remains. Already, 20% of the Amazon is gone. Another 20% is at risk. We are at a tipping point.
I've come to Naval Station Norfolk to meet one of our Navy's top leaders, Danny McGinn. Norfolk is the largest naval base in the world. It launches some of the military's most important combat missions to places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. I want to ask McGinn what he's doing to help speed up the military's move to renewables. But before I get a chance, he tells me that I have to meet one of the base's top admirals to learn about what's happening here.
Cover, this is the second most vulnerable area next to New Orleans in terms of the sea level rise. Right now, our best estimate is approximately a 2-foot rise by the year 2050.
2 feet.
Exactly. The major thoroughfare coming into the base would be underwater anywhere from 2 to 3 hours every single day. That's on normal days. But the thing that really concerns us is the probability of storms that will surge into the Chesapeake Bay, up the river. It can increase sea level rise by 4, 5, 6 or more feet.
We get a Category 1 storm here, we're already putting our piers underwater. So you get a Cat 2 storm, half the base is now underwater.
I can imagine the danger that this
Yes.
base is under all the time.
Exactly.
It's not just Norfolk Naval Station. It's all naval stations all over the world, it seems to me. No?
Exactly. We worry about it everywhere. It's going to intensify. It's going to be more frequent. We're in hurricane season. Could happen literally tomorrow.
At least 18 other major naval bases critical to our defense are at serious risk. Not 50 years from now, but today. It's alarming to learn that climate change could cripple operations all along our eastern seaboard.
When we talk about the future and the rising sea levels, you already have to shut down certain areas now. I mean, this is unbelievable.
We've got to develop alternatives to simply business as usual, rely on cheap oil. We want to, by 2020, in just 4 years, be able to say that 50% of our energy for the Navy, including nuclear power, is coming from non-fossil fuel sources.
50% by 2020 would be a major victory. The Navy consumes about 1/3 of the military's fuel. But what are they doing right now to deal with the immediate flooding threat?
We just built a new pier there that was raised up higher.
Secretary McGinn tells me they're doing all they can to adapt, raising piers and moving sensitive equipment from low-lying areas. But you can't just pick up and move a naval base. And the only real solution to sea level rise is curbing fossil fuels.
I'm sure when you started, you never thought about that you got to deal one day with the challenge of global warming, sea levels rise, right?
Right.
The threat from nature.
Throughout my career, somebody that came up in, flying airplanes early on, it was probably something I didn't give a whole lot of thought to, but these days I give a lot of thought to it.
If we don't start now, in 20 years, we'll be looking back and we'll be saying, why didn't we? Why didn't we listen to the science and the engineers? Climate change is happening and we need to plan for it.
After seeing how much the base still desperately needs to be fortified against sea level rise, I'm even more baffled. I mean, here is a vice admiral with 40 years in the Navy warning that we have got to act quickly, and Congress is still blocking the military's fight to go green?
I'm back home now, thinking about everything I've learned in Brazil. And I'm wondering if there's anything we as individuals can do to help protect the Amazon and fight climate change. To find out, I asked a world expert on food and climate change, Andrew Steer, to come over. He's joining me and Susan Ryan, who helps my family eat well. Can we all keep eating meat as the rate as we are and survive as a planet?
Not if the growth for beef keeps at its current pace. Today there are about 7.4 billion people in the world. There will be nearly 10 billion by 2050, and 3 billion more will enter the middle class. When you enter the middle class, you start eating a lot more meat. And for the world as a whole, beef consumption will probably double by 2050. That means that the amount of land required for beef is just going to push into those forests in a terrible way. Beef takes 20 times as much land as the same amount of nutrition from beans. So if you switch from beans to beef, you need 20 times as much land, and you also produce 20 times as much greenhouse gases, so you actually produce climate change. And even the cattle themselves, through methane emissions, are a very, very serious cause of greenhouse gases. If all the cattle in the world were to form a nation, they would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China and the United States.
When people have the information and they understand what's going on and they understand the impact of the choices they have, they could make better choices, you know?
Yeah, this is really interesting, because the question is, how could we encourage a shift in behavior? I mean, 10 years ago, when people said, here's a veggie burger, you knew it was a veggie burger. Now,
I like veggie burgers.
That's right. Well, that would be great. But some people want beef burgers. And they now can make these that actually people can't tell apart.
I would say 80%, 90% of what we eat, it's plant-based. You just become accustomed to, and then you love it, and then it becomes the most delicious thing.
Right, starting your kids out early. Like,
I think that's
kids love
very
beets.
helpful.
They think they're candy.
The two of you clearly sort of reinforce each other. Deep, deep down inside of you, you believe that you ought to eat in a certain way. So it's not that everybody needs to become a vegan, but we do have to eat less beef. And in fact, if you were to halve your amount of beef consumption, if we in America were, that would have a massively positive impact. We can't solve climate change unless we stop deforestation. And we can't stop deforestation unless we change the way our food is produced. If climate change continues, the world faces a very grim future. It really is a race against time, isn't it?
Climate change is flooding our bases and exacerbating conflicts around the world. Our dependence on oil is killing us. So how is it that so many members of Congress refuse to switch over to renewables as a solution to all of this? I wanted to talk to my fellow Republicans, so I reached out to many members of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, but none of them made themselves available. To be honest, I did not expect to get that much resistance from my own party. And as I spend more and more time here in Washington, I keep thinking about our fuel convoy drivers in the Middle East, whose job it is to bring oil to the troops on the front lines. What do they think about our dependence on fossil fuels and the fight over greening our military? I arranged to meet with some who are now back home.
Now, you were in Afghanistan and you were in Iraq. Both of you were in Iraq.
Yes, we were there together.
And have you been part of an attack driving the fuel around?
Absolutely, yeah. We pretty much got hit every single time we went out.
Every single time?
Every single time, yeah, for the most part.
So all of a sudden there you were, you stepped the first time in this truck and you had all this fuel behind you. Did you know how dangerous this really is?
No, not initially. We were probably there maybe a month before I got attacked. We left every morning at 6 o'clock, and it wasn't too hard to figure out that we were going to be coming. And I was the first truck in the convoy, and there was a turn we had to stop to turn right. And so it was at that intersection that at first it was a grenade and then 3 IED. I was unconscious. My passenger, he was killed.
He was killed?
They definitely had it planned out.
I mean, at one point you would say, let's go and change that. Let's do something different, or let's improve on that.
I've been working on this for over 10 years. When I got home, I knew that I wanted to continue my mission, and how I was doing that was talking about these fuel convoys and talking about how dangerous it was, and that if we moved towards a clean energy future and allowed the Pentagon to do the kind of things that they needed to do, that we could be saving American lives. When it comes to clean energy, it's not about polar bears, it's about fuel convoys and national security for me.
For the military base, we know that now we can provide that with renewable energy.
The only problem is that unfortunately, if Congress finds out about it, they get kind of upset because there's so many people within Congress and the American public that are still deniers, saying climate change isn't real.
How can you be a denier of something like that?
I think I'd like to almost turn the question around on you and ask you how that happens. You ran on a Republican ticket and were actually the Republican governor for California, and a lot of the stoppages being on the Republican side of the political spectrum. How is it?
A lot of these people are controlled by the higher powers, the people, the money people, and so on. Yeah. And that's the sad story.
I know my friend that died. He was a great person, and I don't think his life or anyone else is worth oil. When there's so many other options out there why would you not want to go that route?
Yeah.
If Washington politicians were as courageous as our troops, they would stand up to the oil interests and help our armed forces go green. Meanwhile, the military is using the limited resources it has to test the renewables for wars of the future.
Good morning and welcome to the Expeditionary Base.
The military has long been one of the great innovators. It developed the walkie-talkie, GPS technology, and digital photography. I can only imagine all of the green innovations that we might see if Congress got behind them.
The one that's behind me is the hybrid power trailer. It reduces the amount of fuel that we're going to require.
The Army trained soldiers in renewable systems like the hybrid powered trailer and portable solar generators that can power satellite dishes, GPS, and radios for combat. These systems can reduce the military's addiction to fossil fuels, making our troops and all Americans safer. Our thirst for oil has already cost us too many lives, and it's leading us on a path to self-destruction. We already have the clean energy solutions to help put an end to climate insecurity and the conflict over oil. We just have to fight for them.
I'm finally starting to understand the real meaning of the rainforest I grew up dreaming about, and its key role in balancing the climate on Earth. The Amazon rainforest is vital to sustain life. If we destroy it, it will impact the whole world, because everything is connected. But it can protect itself. We have to pressure our leaders to stop deforestation, to use clean sources of energy, to curb CO2 emissions. And we also have to make some changes in how we live and how we eat. Who will join me in this fight? Because our choices will make a difference when it comes to saving this magical place.